We are rolling. Mic check. Mike, Anthony Michael Hall, Michael Jackson, Michael B. Jordan.
Michael Dukakis.
Ooh, that's a good Michael. Give me some more Michaels.
Mike, Anthony Michael Hall, Michael
Nice.
Anthony, bassist of Van Halen.
Michael Angelo.
Ooh.
Saint Michael.
Okay, hold on, I'm gonna do it. Did you already say Michael Jackson?
Oh.
Michael Jackson?
Michael
Can we
B.
say that in
Jordan,
2025?
Michael Jordan,
Can we still say Michael Jackson?
Mikey Diamond.
Oh, there we go.
Mike D.
Yeah, that's Mikey Diamond.
There you go.
I went to
Okay.
college with his brother, Steve.
Well, now you're
Rest
just
in peace.
well, now you're just showing off. I mean, we're
can I say?
what? We're 30 seconds into this, and you're
Hey, I'm
already
gonna name
drop
drop.
you're already
Beastie Boy
flexing.
I'm
Jason.
gonna name drop so much that your headphones are gonna just fall off. On your left.
You're listening to Doc Walks with Ben and Keith. Ben, I am pleased to introduce the Doc Walks audience to Kahane Corn Cooperman. Kahane is somebody that I've gotten a chance to know over the last 7 or 8 years, and I admire mostly from a distance, although she is staying in the trailer at Go Valley tonight,
Woohoo.
which means we are now better friends than ever.
Best.
Kahane is a filmmaker with a long and varied career, and that's actually the thing I want to talk about first.
Sure.
Because I don't think we've talked to anybody who has worn so many different hats in this industry and who has seen, so many different kind of angles on what it is to be a nonfiction storyteller. And, most obviously, she's an Academy Award nominee for Joe's Violin, what year was that, Kahane?
That was 2017.
2017, shortly after I met her, so I was...
Yeah, we were on the fest tour together.
That's right.
That's how I got to meet you. I heard Austin, and I was like, hey, I've got some Austin connections. I made a doc in Austin.
She did way back almost at the very beginning, but not the very, very beginning.
No.
And so this doesn't need to be a super walk down memory lane, but if you wouldn't mind, take us back to Sundance 1991.
Sure. So I made a short documentary, 16 minutes long, called Cool Water. It was about two ice sculptors in love. They loved each other, ice sculpting and Led Zeppelin, and they carved Jimmy Page out of ice and a lot of other things. Anyway, I was a student at the time. I was answering the phone at Maisels Films, which when I called to try to get a job there, I didn't even know who they were. And
Really?
yeah.
The godfathers of
Yeah,
of,
David had
very-
already,
cinema.
David had sadly passed away, but Albert was still alive. And yeah, so I started answering the phones there, and they let me use their equipment, which was a Steenbeck, by the way, at night and on weekends to cut my own film, which was my student film. And miraculously, that film got into Sundance 91. And so it brought me to Park City when Sundance still had much more of an indie vibe, and there were so many cool films there. Alexander Payne had a short, Paris is Burning was there, Todd Haynes, Hal Hartley, and Slacker was there, Rick Linklater's film. So I met him, and that kind of helped lead me to the set of Dazed and Confused with my best friend from growing up, Deb Lewis, Austin-based cinematographer.
Yes, one of Austin's finest. So
Yes.
you and Deb grew up together, and
We did. We met at age 14
where is this?
in Bethesda, Maryland.
Okay.
Rick lent us his Ari. Deb used it. I recorded sound on a Nagra, and we got this bizarre access to the set of Dazed and Confused every day. So it was like, all these young actors having kind of the summer of their lives in a way. And because the film it took a little while for that film to gain its momentum. The footage was sat on for a while, but it was really incredible footage. And then around 2003, Rick Linklater gave me a call. He said, hey, there's going to be a 10-year reunion of the release of the film. What do you think? And I'm like, no brainer. I'll come down there And Deb and I can shoot everyone, kind of looking back 10 years later at who they are and the time that's passed, and be like have this reflective aspect. And then I was able to finish it, and it's on Criterion now.
Wow, that
Yeah.
is so cool. Really, really cool. And you know what I realized we haven't talked about? We are walking on an absolutely perfect spring morning here in the middle of South by on a trail here on the east side,
I think this is the Boog Creek Trail in East Austin.
the Boog Creek
We're
Trail.
walking through the Go Valley neighborhood, the neighborhood my production company is named for. And this is one of my favorite spots, so I'm glad to share it with you too.
It's super beautiful. This is a dream.
Yeah, describe what we're seeing here.
So we're seeing beautiful kind of green stretch of land with a gravelly path and some really old trees that aren't blooming yet. So they look kind of haunted, but gorgeous.
Haunted old pecans.
Is that what they are?
Yep.
Those are pecan
So it's a
trees.
grove of pecan trees, and there's birds and a few people walking their dogs, and it's absolutely beautiful.
And you know Keith is trying to make this podcast about bird watching, but I won't let him. He's going to ask you what your favorite bird is. He's probably going to point out these grackles here, so just be prepared.
Grackles, they make quite a noise.
It's been covered on this podcast before.
I'm sure.
Getting a boots on the ground, first person experience like you had, being there, seeing all those young actors at play, a young director making a real mark with a film that would go on to kind of define a high school experience for a couple generations of kids.
Yeah.
Certainly mine. That's probably the movie I've seen the most because it was on almost like a record, it was just on in the background my senior year of high school.
Wow.
At pretty much everybody's party.
Yeah.
In everybody's house.
So I want to know what you learned and what you saw in that experience. What did you take from that?
Oh my gosh. What I, kind of tuned into was the different experiences that all of these young actors were having and the stress that Richard Linklater was under. This really was a film made in indie spirit, but with some studio pressures, and they played out like kind of daily. In the documentary, Rick speaks very descriptively and eloquently to, the almost fist fights that he got into with the producers and stuff. But I think, it was just really having this observational post of the experience that all these kids were having. And I've always been a person who's been kind of tuned in to like the fleeting nature of everything. And maybe that's what drew me to making a short film about an ice sculpture, because it melts. And the idea that I was recording all of these experiences, but I was old enough at the time to know that this is so temporary, and how you're feeling in here is so temporary. All of you people making this thing. And I was always so curious, what parts of it they were going to hold on to in their lives.
Oh, that's so interesting.
yeah.
And so
That's kind of what,
advanced of you at a young age to understand that it was fleeting. Here, let's get on this side so this bike rider doesn't crash into us here. Do you think that's a big part of what drew you to making documentaries?
maybe, because in a weird way, I think if there's any kind of connective tissue between the documentaries that I make, besides sort of looking for the humanity in people, it's, I think, time and how it both separates and connects us. I even think Dazed and Confused documentary is ultimately about time, because I was able to kind of shoot it and then go back 10 years later and shoot it. So that's about people looking back on the experience, and then how the past gets reinterpreted in the future, sort of.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I'm rambling, but
No,
that's kind of how my mind works.
That's, I mean, in a way you could say that's like what almost every documentary is about, right? Is
Yeah.
sort of, you know, capturing a certain point in time and then people experiencing it at a later time,
Yeah.
and then how they interpret it based on the modern context.
Yeah.
You know? I should probably flip
Speaking
it
of
around.
time.
Speaking of time, it is
I'll flip it
10
around.
after. So should we flip around here?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so we started out in 1991. You were
Yeah.
at Sundance, and so you met Linklater and all these other kind of luminaries of the 1990s indie film boom. And what gets you from there to The Daily Show, where I know you were an executive producer for many years?
Well, despite the rumors, documentary doesn't pay very much.
This is a hot take. You're here to dispel.
I'm here to dispel. I mean, I'm surviving and I'm doing what I love, so I'm rich in other ways.
Rich in spirit.
Yes. So, as amazing as it was to be making these documentaries, I was also, needing to make a living, and I did like a housing swap with a friend in LA. I produced Nick Broomfield's documentary about Heidi Fleiss called Heidi Fleiss Hollywood Madam. It was me, him, and the camera person, Paul Close, who was from Austin. And that's a feature doc. And then someone I had met through the ice sculpture documentary was an executive at New Line. New Line was doing a television show about reunions, but it was documentary style. So I got hired as a field producer on that. It was like a 6-week gig, and it was awesome because I realized, I have some skills that can translate into like a paycheck. And so I reunited Albert Maysles with a woman he was too scared to talk to in high school. I reunited a band from my high school.
Wow.
And I made these little stories, and it was great. And
This show sounds awesome. What was it called?
it was called Lost and Found, and it was on FX when FX was first starting. I mean, it was
Wow.
a 1-season show, but it was a great experience. And that led to an interview with some people who were developing a show, and it might be called The Daily Planet, and it was going to be on Comedy Central, and they didn't really know what it was. But I had a great interview. They liked my documentary background. And about 6 weeks later, I got a call. We'd love you to be a field producer for 12 weeks. And I lied about what I was used to earning a week, and they said yes. So I got a U-Haul, threw all my LA stuff in there, drove across country, and started this job on day one of this show called The Daily Show. And I think I field produced about 40 stories my first year. And I got a little talking to by the executive producer because I was used to telling stories that don't have, a on-camera presence guiding you along, which is how the correspondents work. And I was like, but these people can tell their own stories. And I got totally taken down by the executive producer. It can't really be documentary. It really has to be comedy, which was never...
It's a hosted, guided, kind of set up, knock them down.
Faux news piece. And so I had to really learn what that meant and how to do that. And in some ways it was different. But after that first year, I got promoted to senior producer because that first 12 weeks turned into a year. And then that year turned into another year. And then I started rising up the ladder. And then within 2 years, Jon Stewart came on board. And the whole show's point of view shifted in this incredibly smart and amazing way. And fast forward, 12 weeks became 18 years. My last 8 years were co-executive producer of the show. It was velvet handcuffs a little bit, and also I was having kids, I had family. It was great having a reliable income. It was great knowing when I could have time off. And it was also great being part of something that became such an incredible institution.
Well, okay, so then, all right, so after 18 years with the golden handcuffs on.
During this time, I still had my nonfiction storytelling heart was still fluttering away in there. And honestly, the higher up I got at The Daily Show, the less creative I became. And after that many years there, I just was like, you only live once. I've got to get myself back to the thing that really feeds my soul. And that is where, on my commute from New Jersey to New York one day to The Daily Show, I heard this 15-second promo for an instrument drive on the radio. And that planted the seed for what would become Joe's Violin, that, you know, was a labor of love, Kickstarter project. And then Jon Stewart announced he's leaving, and I'm in the middle of Joe's Violin. Jon Stewart's announced he's leaving. I'm itchy anyway. And because of his announcement, Alex Gibney, who I'd met a couple times, filmmaker, who of great renown, gave me a call. And he's like, hey, I don't know what Jon Stewart's departure means for you, but I've got a really interesting opportunity. And it was a show running opportunity on a series that was based on content from the New Yorker magazine. And it's called The New Yorker Presents. And basically it was taking content from the New Yorker. We had access to the entire library since 1925 when it first started. And looking at it, and everything from nonfiction, narrative, comedy pieces, cartoons. We could kind of, you know, use it for all its parts to create short form films. And so, yeah, so I was the showrunner on The New Yorker Presents, and I got to work with all these great filmmakers, and the series premiered at Sundance, and it was just wonderful. And again, one hit wonder, because Amazon took 6 months to tell us they weren't renewing it. And that was a bummer, because there was a whole nother lineup of great filmmakers who were kind of knocking on the door saying like, I want to do one of those. Yeah.
I'm familiar with that setup. I've had 2 TV shows feel very successful when they come out and seem like it's a no-brainer to go to season 2.
Yeah.
Only to be told many months later that they're not being renewed.
Yeah.
Well, in true documentary spirit, I need to duck out. I have a pitch coming up that I need to go prepare for.
Wishing you the best on that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
well,
it's not easy.
You know the struggle.
It's scary.
And interestingly, this is a showrunner for hire job, and that's why I need to leave early. And I apologize because I'm very much enjoying the conversation.
I am too. I'm sorry you have to go.
Yeah.
You're stuck with me.
Well, that's
Which is not a great place to be. I'm really
no,
sorry.
I'm feeling good about it. Bye, Ben.
Would you give me almost like a bullet point of the different steps that get us to Joe's Violin?
Yeah. Let me think. So, how did I get to Joe's Violin? I got to Joe's Violin because I really think it's because I was at a point in my life where I was essentially dying to tell another story through a documentary, through nonfiction form. And I think when you're hungry like that, it's like your senses are open a little. And that's why I think, you know, within months I was driving to The Daily Show. And I always say, you know, I was driving from the progressive suburb of Montclair, New Jersey that I live in my Prius, listening to NPR on my way to my job at The Daily Show. I mean, I couldn't be more of a cliche, but the WNYC had a promo for their sister station, the classical music station's instrument drive. And it was about 15 seconds, and all it said was, hey, donate your instruments to our instrument drive. All instruments donated will go to New York City school kids in need. And, you know, they were like, donate your flute, like so-and-so from Brooklyn, or your violin, like, you know, Joe from the Upper West Side, a Holocaust survivor. And I was just like, huh. Like, I was at the light being like, I wonder if that violin has a story. And then, you know, at the next light, I was like, I wonder if the kid who gets that violin is ever gonna know that story. And then the next light, I was like, wait, I wonder what that kid's story is. And then I pulled into the parking lot and I was just like, oh my God, like 2 strangers in the big city are going to be connected by this object, you know, by a musical instrument. And there was something so moving about that to me. Like, I didn't know, even if they never met, they still had this connection of whatever powers this object might hold. And I don't know, I was just intrigued. So I immediately emailed the radio station, and that started me on my journey of Joe's Violin.
That, you know, it's funny, we were talking a moment ago about time and this theme that you've seen through your work of time.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing is a theme of connection, because, you know, Cool Water is the connection between these two ice sculptors.
Yeah.
And Joe's Violin is this connection across time and across the instrument.
Yeah. Two people born 80 years apart from completely different worlds.
And you know, we'll get to talking about Creede, USA in just a moment, but having seen that film a few nights ago, I know that that is a film about connection and overcoming the disconnect between two communities within one small town.
Yeah.
And so this idea of Joe has a story, undoubtedly.
Yeah.
That kid has a story, most likely.
Yeah.
And finding a way to put them together. How easy or hard? It sounds like the idea came almost like in a flash of three stoplights.
In the 3 stoplights and parking lot, what I didn't realize is that I already had a structure for this film, because the only thing I didn't know was the most important thing was, will these people ever meet, you know? And I didn't know, but I was also ready to tackle the intangible if they didn't, because then you just leave it to the viewers to wonder how this connects them in some cosmic way, you know?
And on a beautiful piece of music.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, that's proof that sometimes the first idea really is the best idea.
Sometimes, but I also think like it was also timing, because I don't know that like I necessarily would have like paid that much attention to a 15-second promo on my car radio if I hadn't been so hungry to tell a story and to get back into telling a documentary story. Like, my heart was longing for it, and so I think I was open to it. It's the same way, honestly, like I barely ever read a hard copy of the New York Times, but I happened to be flipping through one, and right then and there is an article about a theater company in this small old mining town in Colorado, and I kind of had the same thought as like the Joe's Violin moment, where I'm just like, wait a second. The more I learned, the more questions I had, and the more I wanted to find out about it. So that was the beginning of Creede, USA.
And that was a skillful segue from Joe's Violin to Creede, USA.
Thank you.
It's like, hey, let's talk about the thing we're here to promote. Let's talk. Creede, USA is a microcosm of American society, writ within this tiny, atypical community,
which is called Creede, the name of the town.
There we go.
Yeah.
Creede.
Correct. So yeah, I read an article in the New York Times about a theater company that was in this little mining town. And I, in my college days, worked on a lot of theater productions, always behind the scenes. And I was a former theater nerd. I like a good theater story, but I was like, how the heck does a theater company function for this long a period of time? Because this theater company started in 1966 in this town. So it's coming up on its 60th season. How does that even work in a little teeny, mostly conservative town? And I thought that was interesting. And also when I learned of the theater from this article, I was also at a point where, like, this was August of 2021. I live in a progressive bubble. It was very comfortable for me, but I was only engaging with people who think and feel like me. I was starting to get uncomfortable with my own knee-jerk reactions against others and sick of my echo chamber. And so when I read the story of Creede, I was interested in the theater, but I was also interested in, like, how does this town even work? I couldn't imagine it. My bubble was so strong. So yeah, I went there by myself a couple times, total outsider, and started out with the theater, who said yes to meeting with me. and I had had a couple Zooms with the artistic director, John D'Antonio, and then one person introduced me to another, and then another, and suddenly I was talking to the very people that I had otherized myself. And, you know, all our guards were up and everything, but they went, honestly, they receded quickly once you start talking on a human level with people. And I was like, I think there's a reason to tell the story of this place right now, because I knew, like, if there's a Venn diagram, like, you've got one circle is like the history of this town, Old West, very cool. The history of the theater, awesome, really interesting, very integrated with the town. It's the town that brought the theater there to try to embolden the economy, which was failing in the mid-60s. But it was like, in the Venn diagram, it's like that little center section that I was interested in. I had no idea where I was going to find it, but I felt like it was worth exploring. And that's kind of what you see play out in the film through the various people we follow, and then ultimately got access to the very place where all of the ideas and these people kind of come together and they hash out. They have some of the most, you know, difficult conversations that our whole country is having within its own bubbles. They're having it together in a room, and it's really hard and can be really tense. And that was really meaningful, and I really wanted to explore that. So that's Creede, USA.
You do explore that, and you don't shy away. You know, it is a film about the overlap of that Venn diagram, and it's about exploring common ground, but it doesn't do it in kind of like a sickly sweet kind of whitewashing of reality that says, oh, look, if we just tried a little harder, we could all get along.
Yeah. Can I just say thank you for saying that?
Sure.
Because if I presented Creede as a utopia or some kind of Pollyannish kumbaya view of how we all get along, I would have failed completely. It is not that.
No,
But
it's not. And you don't shy away from including these scenes that are there, not to give away too much of the film, and it won't sound, I'm just going to warn you, this won't sound like the bit that you would put in the trailer for the film. But there are scenes that are bureaucratic wranglings. They're meetings of people on opposite sides of an issue, working through frustration, sometimes deeply experiencing frustration and finding no common ground in one beat, and then coming back to the table again and again. It has an almost West Wing quality
cool.
to it. But it has a reality. I mean, because it is reality. And
Yeah.
it's a reality of people who are in the small community, and in their own ways, they're still in their bubbles. Their bubbles are much smaller, but the bubbles are forced to interact. And
Yeah.
they're forced to make communal decisions.
Yeah.
To talk directly to the way they're raising their children. That's one of the main issues.
Yeah.
Is how are they going to approve a new curriculum for the school?
A health
that is-
curriculum.
that is challenging to various people's point of view, and it's riveting. It's, you know, it's the kind
Yeah.
of scene that I think when you're filming sometimes in a bureaucratic situation like that, you have to roll a lot of tape, and you don't know if this is going to feel like, is this cinema? Where, you know, I'm pointing a
Yeah.
camera at people at a table, or, you know.
Yeah.
But then through the deft editing, we spoke to your editor the other day.
I know, Andrew Saunderson, amazing editor. This
did
is
a great job.
our sixth time collaborating together. He's a really talented editor and filmmaker.
Well, between your vision and persistence and the depth of knowledge that you have about these characters from your multiple trips out there, and his cutting, you have created an opportunity for us to explore what a society needs to do to recognize difference but find commonality. And you've done it in a way that I don't know, inspires you to want to get up and go burst your own bubble. It inspires you
Yeah.
to want to talk to your neighbor.
This film in no way proposes like the answer to the problems in our country, but it does show, I think, a crucial step that everyone needs to take, which is we all, and I did this the whole time I was thinking to him, you got to get a little uncomfortable. You got to get out of your comfort zone. You got to engage. And I really respect how the people in this town do that, and I think that's what enabled my access to a large degree, because in a town of 300, if you misstep with anybody, that's probably it for you. Word gets around. So I was very respectful, as they were of me.
I'm one of those people that loves hearing how people got to where they've got to, why they make the decisions they make. I mean, I'm sure you're the same way. Every documentary filmmaker I know is curious and obsessed with understanding someone's psychology. But listening to this kind of string of events from Cool Water, which I have to see, through, the Dazed and Confused experience really hits home for me, and the Daily Show experience, I don't even feel like we remotely wrapped our arms around. How could you? It's 18 years and it's Jon Stewart, and it's such a changing set of circumstances in our nation that you were, right there for. But your life after the Daily Show, first with Joe's Violin and now with Creede USA, is kind of like a recapturing of the life that you set out to have in 1991. Is that right?
Yeah, you're totally right. And there have been some nice projects and also some challenging ones in between Joe's Violin and now Creede USA. But both of those are the ones that are completely from my heart and soul. And those are the ones I just can't help it. They mean the most to me.
What do they say about you as a filmmaker? What is somebody who's watched those two films?
I do think they're reflective of the way I see the world, which I'm just going to say it, it might not be, my cup is half full all the time. Generally speaking, I assume the good in people until they prove otherwise. And that's kind of how I approach encounters, large and small. And it's a little bit of my point of view without being naive and without being Pollyanna and but I just, I'm not a super religious person, but I'm spiritual, and I don't mind saying that I believe in a God of my own definition, but what it is for me is the cumulative goodness of humans throughout millennia, and that power is kind of what I feel I don't know, guides me as I navigate the world. It's just what I connect to about people, and hopefully with the films that are the ones that are coming from my heart, that gets illustrated, that my viewpoint of people and the beauty of life, even without avoiding the darkness, the unfairness, the horrors, and all of that. Because I can't, because I also I come from that in a lot of ways.
Well, you're not afraid to walk the path that admits that there is a dark side of living this life. But I do think that optimism does shine through. And, we need that. I want that, especially out of the kind of films that I've seen from you that meet people where they are and have a very honest and kind of, dare I say, earnest, kind of approach. I know some people have a problem with earnestness, but I think
it's definitely not cool, don't have an edge, and I kind of say F that to all of it, because actually, I think my films are, in their own way, they are subversive, and sometimes it's against the grain of what's perceived as cool. And so, yeah, I just disagree. And also, I don't think, my films or myself are all nice either. But I also, I'm not shy. I admit, I know that it can be an effective tool in your toolbox for how you relate to people. And
it certainly is when you travel cross country and you plop down in a town in the middle of nowhere, and you set yourself the task of convincing absolute strangers to let you in.
Yeah. Well, I think it's not disingenuous, and I think people can sense that. And if it is, you're never going to get, I think, as the access, the true access that you really want. You need to be genuine with people to get their genuine selves back at you.
Well, that's a good piece of advice that kind of keys up where I want to wrap this thing out.
Sure.
You've been at it since 1991 at least, and I know you've got many more years ahead of you of great storytelling. What advice can you share with an emerging filmmaker and with new storytellers who are seeking to have the kind of success that you've had?
Well, I think you have to be driven in a lot of ways, but I also think you have to be open to where the path is going to take you. And like there's just no wasted steps. There's 0 wasted steps. And I think like if you want to make films, but you have a day job, you know, like I did in the past, like didn't seem like I was getting myself anywhere, but what really I was doing was like getting to observe humanity and be around people that I didn't always cross paths with. And it was all like ingredients for the cauldron that gets you to where you want to go. And so I just think like nothing is a wasted opportunity, and it can all move you forward in surprising ways. So, and the other thing I learned is that sometimes you feel like if you're not actually like physically filming or writing, that you're not doing it, but you are, because it's percolating and it's in your head and it's in your consciousness so my advice is like, give yourselves a break.
I absolutely love that. No wasted steps. I'm pretty sure that's the name of this episode. No wasted steps with Kahane Corn Cooperman. Ben had to duck out, as we know, a little bit ago for his pitch. So let's all send him some good luck through the magic of the airwaves and time, and hope that his pitch went well.
Absolutely. Hope it went well, Ben.
And I'm so glad that we got to spend this time together.
Me too.
It's
And
just been a blast.
thanks for letting me crash in the trailer in your backyard.
Well, it's not for every Doc Walks guest, but for you anytime.
It's my dream come true.
All right, that was Kahane Corn Cooperman. Her new film, Creede USA, is out on the festival circuit as we speak, and I hope you get a chance to see it. And I hope you get a chance to come back next week for the next episode of Doc Walks. Ben will be back in the fold, and we welcome distribution advocate Avril Speaks to walk around Mueller Lake Park here in Austin. We're talking producing, talking directing, talking show running, talking the modern state of distribution, and Avril's a lot of fun. So hope to catch you on the next episode of Doc Walks with Ben and Keith. Doc Walks is created, produced, and edited by my friend Ben Steinbauer of The Bear.
Hello. And my friend Keith Maitland of Go Valley.
Thanks for tuning in.
Follow us at Doc Walks Pod on Instagram, X, and YouTube.